Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the No Mustard Podcast. This podcast is brought to you from the purchase of my magazine and art by viewers like you. You can learn more about my work or join the Fast Food Legend newsletter by visiting fastfoodlegend.com. I'd like to introduce my guest this week, Guy Richards Smit, a New York-based artist whose work spans painting, performance, video, and cartooning, often exploring themes of narcissism, desire, power, and failure through humor and satire. His work has been shown at institutions including the Museum of Modern Art and the Pompidou Center, and he's also known for his cartoons published in outlets like The New Yorker. Welcome, Guy. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi there. It's so great to be here.
So today, I know you grew up in Morningside Heights. Is that correct?
I did, yeah.
I thought we would start there, and you would give us a little bit of a tour of the current state of the New York fast food scene. Okay?
Okay. All right.
I'm going to show you a picture and we'll talk about it. Feel free to tell me anything about it, how it makes you feel, what memories it triggers, anything at all you'd like to talk about is just fine, as long as you start by looking at the image and telling us about the image.
Okay.
Okay? Great. So we're going to start at the Shake Shack. What's going on here?
That doesn't look like Shake Shack to me. Is that a Shake Shack? I've never had that food choice at a Shake Shack. I've had hamburgers. I've had portobello burgers. I've had, of course, the fries and then the cheesy fries and the various milkshakes, the black and white. But I've never had this.
So I personally find the image triggering, and let me tell you why. I'm also a New York native originally, and like you, I watched through the Giuliani years and the Bloomberg years as the city reframed itself from manufacturing and industry, and even to some degree of Wall Street, and became more of a tourist destination. And
Yeah.
it was very upsetting to me for a lot of reasons, but of course, the classic New York City hot dog from a cart would always be boiled, not really
Soup
grilled.
dog.
And every once in a while, we started to see, as tourists came in, they would ask for it to be grilled. And there was a cart right near the Whitney, the old Whitney, not the new
Hmm.
one. And he was starting to cut the hot dogs in half because that's what the tourists were requesting. And so
Really?
Shake Shack comes in, turns into this huge national chain, and comes up to Morningside Heights, opens the shop, and is selling the hot dogs pre-cut in half. It's not requested. This is how it comes. And so those are the things that I think about. How do you feel about it in that context?
Well, it's funny that you bring that up in terms of the history of the grilled hot dog as opposed to the soup dog. I always personally preferred the grilled dog, and you could only get them at Grace Papaya on 72nd Street and in the Times Square subway station. There was a place that it was maybe a kind of a papaya type place as well, um, that would have, rows and rows of them just slowly grilling. And I liked it because you got that kind of burnt crunch from it as opposed to the soggy quality. Um, uh, the cutting it in half seems violent and unnecessary. I imagine it's so that um, Chicagoans who cover it in all kinds of things feel more comfortable. Um, but for me, I really only ever want onions and or sauerkraut, um, and maybe mustard when I'm feeling special.
I had forgotten. I grew up on the east side, so I grew up with Papaya King, same type
On
of thing.
86th Street.
86. I grew up on
Yeah.
86. And I had forgotten until you said it. I don't remember the one in the Times Square station. I do remember some guys in Penn Station that did them on the aluminum foil on top of the grill.
Right.
But I forgot that on 42nd, before the renovation in the late 90s, underneath one of those theater marquees, they had ripped out the box office, and that had been a hot dog stand as well.
Yes.
And he grilled it. It was on the north side of the street, but I can't remember what's there now. I guess probably where the Dallas BBQ is, somewhere around there,
I
if
don't
that's even
recognize
still
any of it.
there. Yeah. All right, let's have a look at the next image. This is, I
Ah.
believe, on 125th. Raising Cane's, a chain from the southern states, which is in all kinds of strange places now, like Flushing and in the Village. And tell me about this, and also tell me about this mural of the box combo on the left.
Um, okay, Raising Cane's is interesting because my children love it and talk about it. I've never had Raising Cane's. Um, there does seem to be a, a chicken, the fried chicken cultural explosion has gone too far. Um, I'm I prefer the the simple things. Um, Now, in terms of that mural, I really don't like those digitally produced murals. They seem cheap to me. They seem uh, like they're ready to rip it out the day that it stops making profits. But also, like sometimes you'll see that with a delicate, a bodega or a, Habibi kind of place, and they'll do all the things. And sometimes there's a cacophony, which is exciting. There's so many options, and they're all sort of cheaply printed and placed outside, and they get kind of sun bleached, and that's interesting. It gives it a a relationship to the city and the outdoors. But that's just one, and it seems cheap and sad and cutting corners.
It is interesting how the chicken fingers are so generational.
How kids don't eat them now, or that
No, how when we grew up, they didn't exist really. And then we
right.
had chicken nuggets, and then
And
there
that
was
came
just
out.
this
I
wave.
remember the excitement of chicken nuggets when they came out, and I must have been a teenager already.
And then there was just this wave of chicken finger nostalgia when canes started proliferating around the early 2000s. Um, it is interesting.
Yeah.
I remember my grandfather talking about grilled cheese sandwiches as if they were brand new, and I guess that's our version of
Yes.
that.
Well, I remember a place. Oh, look at that. Is that a
So
McDonald's?
Donald's on 125th.
Oh, I don't think I've ever been in there.
I'm really intrigued in this neighborhood at the number of drop ceilings in the
Yes.
fast food chains. Why are there so many drop ceilings, do you think?
Well, I imagine it's because this looks like it was done in the 80s and it was cheaper than dealing with whatever was on the ceiling, I bet. Um, and making it uniform. And probably, I mean, I'm sure if this is that old and it's 125th Street, so I grew up on 120th Street, and they probably were trying to push that it was clean food and that you were in a clean space and that it was going to be uniform. So I imagine at the time this uh, really came across as clean, almost like a hospital.
I believe this location has been remodeled since then, but do you have any thoughts about this image beyond that?
Well, I remember there was a Burger King on um, 79th Street and Broadway, I think. It may have been lower down, but it was, uh, uh, and it was because of the generational population on the Upper West Side at the time, and possibly still now, but it was always full of very old people. And I can't get over this woman sitting in the front there. and they would be drinking their tea, and they would kind of join one another. There'd be groups of them, kvetching and doing all the stuff. Um, and I remember I didn't like going there because they were often in a bad mood, or they had bags with them. And that woman reminds me of it. And I have another thought, and this is not charitable, but I was uh, in my neighborhood. My current neighborhood is Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and I was walking by a Dunkin' Donuts, and it was a rainy, crappy day, cold, and on Manhattan Avenue, and there's a woman like who looked like her with a cup of tea, looking out at the passerby, and I remember thinking, like, I may never have money, and I may uh not have a lot of the things that I had hoped I would have by this age, but I'll never be that woman staring out of the window, killing time. Uh, because and how lucky I am to have a what career I have, but also more than that, just like a pastime. That if I was her, I would probably be home sitting, drawing something, and not waiting for the day to pass by. And maybe
Completely
she wasn't.
understand.
Maybe she was having an excellent time thinking of poetry. I don't know.
That's
But I remember that thought I had as I passed by.
interesting. I think that Burger King was on 72nd,
I think
just
you're absolutely
about.
right.
And I think it later became a Kenny Rogers Roasters that was infested with flies from the day it opened till the day it went out of business. Do you remember Kenny Roger Roasters?
Very, very, very rare, like not well.
So here's that same McDonald's from the outside, and what I wanted to draw your attention to, I'm going to attempt to zoom. No, it's not working. Oh, there we go. These McDonald's flags, which as a New Yorker, I just saw as normal, and having left and lived in a lot of other places since then, I realize are very unique to New York City.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but of course most places don't need a flag. They've got the room to put the golden arches and everything.
Have you ever noticed these flags before?
I noticed the one briefly, but I it seemed normal to me, but there's the one down on Saint between 5th and 6th on 2nd Avenue. Uh no, 1st Avenue. Um that's been there forever. Uh and it has a flag too, if I'm correct. And the one on uh the one on Canal Street also has a flag.
I was thinking about the one on Broadway down near St. Mark's, but yeah, yeah, such an interesting
Yeah,
artifact.
it doesn't have the majesty of huge golden arches.
Oh. I also noticed that when they remodeled them, they changed the color of the flags. So this is on, I believe, on 125th or just about. This is Dave's Hot Chicken, and
Ah,
this is the mural installation in the Dave's Hot Chicken. Tell me about it.
it looks very fun. Um, I have been to a Dave's Hot Chicken in Boston, because my one of my sons begged us to go, and it was good. I enjoyed it. Um, that looks very. It wasn't as clean and colorful as this one is. Although there was a graffiti mural there too, I think. Um, but this one looks very bougie. And then the ceiling, um, that thing almost looks like a Kenny Scharf mural or something.
Yeah, the mural on the ceiling kind of reminded me of those limousines that have the light show on the, on the roof.
Oh my God, that's right. It does. It looks like a psychedelic light show.
Okay, let's have a look at the next one. I love
Oh,
this one. Tell me about it.
there was a White Castle. Where is this one?
All in that same general
Really?
area. Yeah.
Um, I never went to White Castle as a kid, but I went to one in Long Island when I was like 16 or something. And then when I moved to Greenpoint, there was one on Graham, no, Metropolitan Avenue between Bushwick and Graham. Um, it's no longer there. Uh, but that I went to a few times. And I remember it was famous for being in some Beastie Boys video. Um, there was something always kind of amazing about the compactness of the smallness of all the I guess they were sliders. I'd never heard of a slider at the time. Uh, and where the aesthetic, I know its history, which is fascinating. The whole, really what we were talking about, like attempting to show fast food as clean uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Getting it, you weren't going to get variations. You were going to get, you were going to get a standard product and it was going to be clean and you weren't going to get trichinosis. Um, uh, but sadly, like I feel like even in our youth, White Castle had already seen its heyday. So it always seemed a little sad and passé to me.
I think that this is one of the locations where they don't really want customers. They just want to be a pickup point for delivery drivers.
Right.
But I do think it's funny the way that it looks from the street, almost like it's a medical clinic.
It really
Um,
does. It looks like you can walk in, with if you're bleeding profusely.
and I believe that the next image may be the interior. It is.
Oh,
So this is what
wow.
it looks like inside.
Look at that drop ceiling. I mean, I bet you could hit your head on that.
Well, look at the scale of the and placement of the television set
Yeah.
against the consumption area. I don't know what else to call it because there's
What do
no
you think they
seats. They
show
don't.
on that? Do you think they show in-house videos or like CNN?
I would hope that they show Pix 11 in the wrong aspect ratio. Like I hope it's over the air 4:3 stretched to 16:9 with the sound just blasting so
Yeah,
loud because they don't want anybody standing there for any amount of time.
right.
That would be my hope. But I haven't seen Pix 11 daytime in years, so I don't know what's on during the daytime now. Um, but
Right.
and I would hope it would be Maury, but Maury's retired, of course.
Yeah.
And yeah, I kind of get the sense that's what it might be. What do you think they would show?
Well, I like the idea that they would show I mean, maybe like Mexican novellas or
Telenovelas? Yeah.
something for like the local community. But I don't know why anyone would really go in there unless you were um I think you're right that it's really like purely for pickup.
It's a very bleak space.
It really is.
This is a
Oh.
Popeyes, and here's
Ah.
what's interesting because I don't know if you know about this stuff, but this has been remodeled. This has very clearly been remodeled from a Popeyes to a Popeyes Louisiana kitchen. And you can see
Hmm.
that by the fake jars of spices on display. But what remains that I find so intriguing is the bulletproof glass protecting the kitchen and ordering areas. Most people theoretically are ordering by phone or by tablet, but they
Yeah.
still have a cashier that you can clearly see
Yep.
and that they took the time to remodel it, but still maintain the bulletproof glass
in a
is really
nod to
fascinating to me.
125th Street of yore.
It's very fascinating. What do you think
Yeah.
about it?
I bet that it becomes a place that kids go after parties or after a night of drinking and uh and can't handle like ordering on a tablet, and so they got to go up and you just want to be careful that when a large group of kids comes in that you're protected.
But if that's the case, why remodel it?
Um well, I mean,
The
you don't
only
want it to be
the
ugly,
only
right?
logic that I could find was that they got government money during the pandemic and they had to
Oh.
spend it. But if you have another
Or
theory, I'm
is
interested.
it possible that they were getting the city came in and found the place, gave them a B, and so they had to. Like if it was roach infested and it turned out that there was like a colony of rats and roaches under the rotted floors, it just becomes cheaper.
That could be.
Maybe there
You
are
never
actual dead people under it.
could be. I mean, I'm sure that this building has stories.
Yeah. Is it an old building or one of the new ones?
Old building. It's on a corner, I believe. Tell me about this.
Oh, Dunkin' Donuts. It's fascinating to me. And I like going in there because they have crullers and they have their cinnamon rolls are quite good. Um, and so far as I can tell, the franchises have been taken over by mostly East Asians. Um, and they run a tight ship. Um, and they offer all kinds of different iced coffees, um, cold brews and matcha. And uh, what I love about it is that my whole family is always very happy when we've left it, and I have bags of uh, delicious treats when we're on the road. And so it does conjure up. Um, so like it's funny, like Kentucky Fried Chicken for me. There was one on. Or there's still it's still right there. It's been there forever on 23rd Street and I think First Avenue, or the corner of First or Second Avenue. And I used to have a friend, and when I'd walk home, the smell of it would I would get sucked into it, and I would get a 3-piece, and afterwards I felt sick, and I'd feel sick, and I'd walk home just going like, why'd I do that again? But something about Dunkin' Donuts where I always just get the one thing, I don't overdo it, and everyone is so much happier and quiet after getting their chosen donut that I have uh really good memories of it.
As you can see from the mural, this is a combination. Dunkin' Donuts and Baskin
Oh,
Robbins.
Baskin Robbins.
And Baskin Robbins seems to have really disappeared as a single store anywhere in New York City. Do you remember going to a
Yeah,
Baskin
there was one on
Robbins?
111th, 112th and Broadway that we go to as kids, and we're astounded at the 52 flavors or what was it they were so proud of, uh, and then they were undone by Haagen-Dazs. Uh, and they were probably like one up from Carvel. But did Carvel actually serve ice cream, or was it just ice cream cakes?
Carvel had ice cream.
Okay. Um, yeah. So I loved that um, how colorful the ice cream was. Now I see it as corporate and fake. But when I was a kid, it was the bubblegum ice cream, the um, what my oddly as a child, my favorite one of my favorite ice creams was pistachio, and it was bright green. Um, and I thought that was really neat.
And the bubblegum ice cream used to come in a miniature plastic baseball helmet.
That did it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was seasonal, and
Uh-huh.
they timed it for baseball season.
That's hilarious.
Okay, we've got one more image to look at. This is a Five Guys in the same neighborhood, and the first thing I'd like to point out is that it does not have bulletproof glass,
Yeah.
nor did the Raising Cane's. And I guess part of the intrigue for me in this neighborhood is why some places have the bulletproof glass and other places do not.
My theory for this is that, and you may have experienced this as well. Having grown up in New York City, I have missed every real estate. I've never been able to buy any real estate at all, but I've certainly missed every opportunity to buy it cheap. And one of the reasons is because my memory of New York is such that there's certain areas you just don't go into and certainly don't choose to live in that area. Uh, I remember not realizing, so Carroll Gardens to me was simply a place you ran through desperately until the Marias stopped in the yards. And when my friends started to live there, it was totally confusing to me. People buying places in Bed-Stuy as a kid, not a kid, but even 15 years ago, 20 years ago now, confused me to no end. I couldn't understand how you could do that. And I think it's because, so I'm going to guess that the owner of that particular franchise of Popeyes has been around long enough to be traumatized by the old 125th Street and is not going to just go out on a limb and not have the necessary protection. That's my theory.
Have you been to the Five Guys?
Not this particular Five Guys. I have gone to Five Guys. I like it. I like the free peanuts. Um, the simplicity. I don't like generally the. I mean, I get what they're getting at with their interiors. Um, but I do tend to find it a little depressing. It doesn't have enough happening. It seems very and I think that they're kind of partly going for that, but
It seems to me that they just took that one section of Fuddruckers and expanded it to the entire floor plan.
yes. Yes. Agreed. Agreed.
It is amazing. I mean, I remember all the things like, you'd have to bundle your Walkman under your sweatshirt under this and run the wires up through here
Oh
and
my God,
all
yeah.
that stuff. And now people just casually walk down the street with $1,000 phone in their hands like it's
Yeah.
nothing. Like
They leave it on the Five Guys table when they go up in order, you know?
yeah, I'm with you in that regard. When Brooklyn started to happen, I didn't see it. I didn't understand it. And I mean all of Brooklyn, not one neighborhood or another. And I
Right.
avoided it like the plague. And when I finally had enough money to move back into the city, I was like shocked that all of a sudden, anywhere I would want to go at night, I would now have to go all the way to Brooklyn because
Yeah,
I'd been
yeah,
living in Queens. And so for years, I had to schlep into the city. I move into the city. Now they want me to schlep out to Brooklyn. And I wasn't having it.
yeah, 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 yeah.
It was very strange to me. I was also amazed at just how fickle the people were, that they would so easily adapt to these changes.
Absolutely. And but I think that, there's probably core memories. I mean, I remember, and not to get all like New York old days kind of thing, but a friend of mine, we'd avoid Central Park at night.
Sure.
I grew up across from Morningside Park, and I, I only went in once growing up, and it was directly across the street from me. I went in there with a friend a few months ago because I read in the Times that the spring had they've gotten this waterfall started again. And I still felt like I was being transgressive by wandering around this park that I should never go in, and was warned about, and actually saw violence happen in and stuff. And so unless people have those experiences, I'm kind of happy that, people are like, oh yeah, Bed-Stuy, what beautiful buildings these are. And I'm like, wow, it's neat that you're so free to just see how beautiful the building is and be like, great. So it's definitely held me back on occasions, this kind of silly holding on to core memories like that. I mean, when you were first brought up uh, a hot dog, uh, and we were talking about Grace Papaya, and I remember, like, one of my core memories is in 1982. I went with my father to see Excalibur at the 83rd Street Lowe's. Um, and we got the times wrong, or that they were misprinted in the Times or something. I can't remember, but we had an hour to kill before the movie actually started. And so we walked down from 83rd Street to 72nd and got Gray's Papaya, which I at that time never had before. And we walked by that park, and my dad pointed it out and said, that's Needle Park. And I did, I was like, oh, well, that's heavy. And I only found out later, like, what that really meant. But that was, so that was 72nd Street and Broadway was a dangerous place to be, let alone any other place. Um, so yeah, and then
Yeah,
we got to see Excalibur, and I got to sit next to my dad, and while we watched, like, uh, a guy have sex with a woman in full armor. I remember being very uncomfortable.
I guess we're going to leave it on that. Thank you so much, Guy Richards Smit, for joining us this week. I'll see you guys next week. And if you look in the description, you'll see links to all of Guy's socials and all about his work. It's fascinating. You're going to love it. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for having me.